Over the last 4 weeks, widespread strikes and heated protests have rocked Iran. The authorities have cracked down hard. Rights groups say more than 200 people have been killed in clashes with police and thousands have been detained. The unrest started when a young woman died while in the custody of the morality police. That young woman was 22-year-old Jina Mahsa Amini from Iran's Kurdish region. She was arrested for not complying with the strict rules on wearing a headscarf. Now she's become the face of the protest movement that's seen thousands of women take to the streets. Women have been at the forefront of the anti-government protests, rejecting the repressive policies of Iran's hardline Islamic leadership. And despite police shooting live rounds at them, their protests have only grown in size and in passion.
This is what outrage looks like in Iran. People who feel they've nothing left to lose, daring imprisonment or worse. Many disagree strongly with the government's rules on dress for women, and that someone had to die for breaking them.
In my opinion, they should remove the hijab altogether. Anyone who likes it can wear it, and anyone who doesn't need to.
Iran is a religious state, and the official interpretation of Shia Islam relies on a fundamentalist view of women's and men's roles. Women are required to dress modestly, and that includes covering their hair at all times in public. This is a core value of Iranian law since the revolution in 1979. Child custody and divorce settlements favor men, who can also prohibit their wives from working in certain professions. Women are not allowed to leave the country without their husband's permission. Women receive far less inheritance when a parent dies than do their brothers, and they face discrimination in inheriting their husband's estates as well. The Iranian government does not seem poised to change discriminatory laws. Rather, the senior mullahs have blamed the West for the protest movement. But that hasn't stopped the widespread chants, "Woman, life, freedom," that have been ringing out across the country.
And joining me in the studio now is DW's correspondent, Teresa Tropper, who's travelled to Iran and reported from Iran extensively. Teresa, are we getting to know everything that is currently happening in Iran?
No, I'm sure we're not, because taking pictures or filming, even if it's only with a smartphone, is a huge risk for anyone in Iran at the moment. If you're caught doing that in a situation like this one, you'll be beaten and jailed or worse. And then even if you've done so, publishing it is also a challenge, because sending it to somebody or uploading it on social media is also dangerous. And it's hard, given the fact that there are still internet shutdowns all over the country, especially, for example, in Iran's Kurdish regions, which have turned into a major protest hub in the last couple of weeks. And then even if you've achieved all of that, it has to make its way into international news coverage. And that's also not always happening, because it's hard to verify these videos. And there are no correspondents on the ground. So I'm pretty sure we haven't seen the full scale of both the protests and the crackdown on them.
Teresa, even if women are largely leading these anti-government protests, men have also joined in. Does that surprise you?
No, not really, because the hijab and the discrimination against women in general is not the only reason why Iranians, and especially young Iranians, have had enough of the Islamic Republic. It's a lack of human rights in general. And most people protesting now were born long after the revolution in 1979. And they can see on social media how people their age live in other areas of the world. And they want the same thing for themselves. So they don't want to be denied freedoms and opportunities by the old men that are ruling them at the moment, especially if you consider the fact that the children and grandchildren of these old men themselves mostly live in the West. So they enjoy the freedoms Iranians in Iran cannot. And that's why not only men, but also other groups have joined the protests. Iran's minorities, for example, lawyers, workers, many groups. And that's why protesters now feel that this time it could work out and they could succeed.
Now, European foreign ministers are expected to approve a new set of sanctions against Iran on Monday. Do you think the EU has been too soft so far?
Well, apart from condemnation and symbolic moral support. So far, we haven't seen much from the European Union, like cutting your hair in public, for example. And that's also true for Germany.
So no big demos on the streets of Berlin, for example.
And if so, it was mostly Iranians living in exile protesting and not people from Germany or European countries mostly. And I'm sure protesters will be watching closely what kind of sanctions the European Union will agree on. If it's sanctions that actually target and hit the people in power who are responsible for the human rights violations, or if it's ordinary Iranians, again, who have mostly been paying the price for sanctions against Iran in the past.
Teresa Tropper, thank you very much.